36 Central African Time. We bring you to South Africa, where job losses in the sugar industry are threatening the livelihoods of small-scale growers. This is according to independent and industry data, which says the impact is due to the so-called sugar tax. Meanwhile, the South African Medical Research Council and the Wits Centre for Health Economics and Decision Science has refuted this data. For more, we're joined on the line by Thomas Funke, the CEO of SA Canegrowers. A very good afternoon to you, Thomas. Thank you for your time today. So there are those that say that the sugar tax is affecting the industry heavily, while others are saying this is not the case. What is your take on this, Mr. Funke?
Yes, good afternoon. It's an interesting counter-argument. We have data dating back to the 1930s, and that is when our organization started. So every year we've been conducting research data and collecting data from farmers on the ground to ensure that we understand how many people they employ, obviously because we are such a big employer. Now, what was interesting in 2018 when the sugar tax was implemented, and local market sales dropped dramatically, we saw in our data that the farmers were retrenching staff. And when we went to them and actually, interrogated this information to ensure that it's valid and true, they confirmed that it was just unaffordable to keep, the staff numbers or the staff on their farms employed. And that they had to cut back in order to stay in business. So, I find it interesting that others are refuting that information.
So you've touched a bit about the reports that you've done as the SA Canegrowers Association. Could you tell us more about what it is that you found, more in depth, and what perhaps could be the other factors that are impacting the reduction in, is it a reduction in demand perhaps?
Yeah, so what we saw happen when the sugar tax was implemented was that the beverage sector, who was obviously heavily hit by this additional tax, started reformulating their soft drinks. And that is a trend, that has happened all over the world where there was pressure on the use of sugar in their products. And in South Africa, it was no different. So as a result of that, they purchased less sugar from the industry. And how it works in our sugar industry is that the growers and millers share the income that is earned from sugar sales. So any drop in sales means that the farmers get paid less because that sugar has to be exported. And in the sugar industry, what you don't want to do is you don't want to export your sugar. You want to sell it all locally because the world market price is extremely low. And when this happened, 250,000 odd tons had to be exported in addition to what we export already, which meant that we lost revenue of around 1.25 billion rand in that first year alone. So that trend was sort of a once-off because there was a drastic step to reformulate and to move away from paying the sugar tax, and thereafter it stabilized. And that's also what the NEDLAC study had shown, that in the years prior to COVID-19, these job losses occurred.
So does this mean then that the soft drink manufacturers are using, alternatives for sugar, or are they merely just reducing the sugar content? Because that is obviously going to impact how their products taste, and that might not be to the pleasure of the consumer.
Yeah, I can't speak for them, but what I do know is that there's a certain taste profile that they are maintaining in their soft drinks. And in order to do that with less sugar, you have to add an artificial sweeteners. And if one turns over a product like that, you will see on the back, on the table of ingredients, what they use. And those are normally non-nutritive sweeteners. So that is true. The extent of the sugar tax is often underestimated. At the time, a ton of sugar, for example, cost 10,000 rand. The sugar tax is around 2.3 cents per gram, which translates into around 23,000 rand per ton. So if you were a soft drinks manufacturer and you were purchasing your sugar at 10,000 rand a ton, after the sugar tax was implemented, you were suddenly paying 33,000 rand a ton for that sugar. And that's why these companies had reformulated so drastically.
Now, we spoke about the loss of jobs within the cane and the sugar industry. The Bureau for Food and Agricultural Policy says that cane growers can expect a further loss of 10% of direct jobs by the year 2031. What is it that you believe needs to be done to ensure that this actually does not happen?
Yeah, so in their work, they've got forward-looking models where they project certain scenarios. And when they did work just to show what the impact of a change in the sugar tax could be, they came up with those figures. So in order to reverse that job loss number, one would have to find an alternative sort of income stream for your sugar cane. And we're working hard to make sustainable aviation fuels a reality. That came out of our sugar industry master plan. As an industry, we're also looking at bioplastics as an alternative. So the big drive for us is to find, alternative means, other products, and move away from sugar and molasses only.
Well, Thomas Funke, it's been a pleasure speaking with you this afternoon. Thank you for the insight into the sugar industry and the impact that the sugar tax has had on the industry. We thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's Thomas Funke. He's the CEO of the SA Cane Growers. He takes us to exactly 1:43 Central African Time. In just a moment, we'll look at artificial intelligence in the world of business.